Hello, hello, good morning. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Saturday 10 a.m. technique at the Chocolate Tour of Belgium online crop. This morning we're going to be looking at something that I'm calling targeted smooshing. If you're familiar with the concept of smooshing, then you will know that's when you apply ink to a non-porous surface and then you spray it with water and then you smush your paper into it. So it's called smooshing, that kind of thing. And so we're going to be doing that today, but we're doing targeted smooshing as opposed to random smooshing because I always feel when you dip your paper into the ink, you kind of get what you get and you can't really target it as much as you could. So we're going to do some targeted smooshing. We're going to be looking at a stamp set from the current January-February catalog, which is called Hummingbird Wings. Right here, this one up here, and you can see some beautiful artwork that's been created with it over here on the side. It's got some, well, let me grab the stamp set. It's got a couple of hummingbirds, one with its wings out, one that's sort of tucked in sitting. There's a little branch, there's a little bit of a flower, and then an individual flower. There's also some dots that you can create a pattern with, and then there's some sentiments. Hello, wishing you well, you're the sweetest, spread your wings. Lots of fun things in that stamp set. So we're going to be looking at the stamp set and we're going to be doing some targeted smooshing. If you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later on replay, you can say replay. Now, because we are doing some smooshing, even though it's targeted smooshing, we're going to need something to protect our work surface. So I'm just grabbing my all-purpose mat to put over top of my Versamat to keep everything contained. Now for this, you're going to need something to spray some water, and this is what I have in my craft room right at the moment. So it's a great big spray bottle. I used to have the smaller one that Close to My Heart used to carry, and but unfortunately, I used to have this one, which I really loved, but the sprayer seems to have gone in it, and so it doesn't spray the water anymore. So sad. And if you have a sprayer that doesn't spray, that kind of defeats the purpose of having a sprayer. Now, I'm going to start out with a piece of white daisy cardstock, and this technique can be used on a lot of things. I'm just showing it to you on a card because it's a smaller footprint and we can get it all done in a short amount of time. So I'm starting out with a piece that's going to be a panel on a standard size card. So this is 4 inches by 5 1/4, just white daisy cardstock. Doesn't require anything fancy. You don't need watercolor, all that kind of thing. And the other thing I want is a block. And I want my acrylic block to be big enough to do the technique that I want to do. So this is longer than my piece of paper, and that will work perfectly. And it's also about the right width, okay? Because you're smooshing, we're targeting our smooshing, and so that is going to determine the size of the smoosh we get. So if you want, say, just a little skinny strip of smooshing, you could use this block that's only 1 inch wide, and then you would get just a nice little strip of smooshing. We want ours to be a little bit chunkier because it's going to be creating the background for what we're adding to our card. Good morning, Mom. Nice to see you're watching. Hello, hello. I'm just going to adjust my chat there so I can see when anybody pops in and says hello. So what we want to do for this targeted smooshing is we need to choose some ink colors that are going to play well with one another. And so for mine, I want to create sort of a lovely summery feeling of, you know, sunshine through the trees type of thing. And so I'm going to start out with honey butter. And then to go along with my honey butter, I have 2 white. No, they look white because they're prototype inks. But I have Limeade and Jade, which are 2 different greens. One is lighter, one is darker. Those are 2 of the new colors this year. So limeade and green. So I've got honey butter, limeade, and green. And I'm going to start out with my honey butter. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply our ink directly to our stamping block. So we're going to take our honey butter first because you have to start with your lightest color first. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some honey butter, and I can even wiggle it around onto the center of my block. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but there's honey butter just in the center of my block. This is actually a really quick technique. Then I'm going to take my next lightest or my next darkest color, which is the limeade, and I'm going to add some limeade to the bottom of my block. Wiggle, wiggle, like so. And then I'm also going to add a little bit to the top. So I'm not going to lay it flat down. I'm going to just kind of move the edge around to add a little bit of that color above the honey butter. Okay. And then we're going to take the darkest color, which is the jade, and we're going to add that above that limeade that we applied there. So there we go. Now I'm going to leave it there. I'm not adding any dark down at the bottom end. Okay. Then we need to bring in our sprayer, and I'm going to kind of lift this up because my sprayer doesn't like to lean down. And we're just going to lightly spray. We don't want too much water on there, but we want enough. Too much, but not too much. Just enough. And then you can kind of jiggle your block around. You can kind of lean it this way and that way and allow the colors to kind of shift around a bit so you don't have those sort of hard lines where you applied the ink pad. Okay, and then what we want to do, oh, I got a drip on there already, so we'll turn it around. I'm going to flip this over, and it's got a little bit of stick-to-itiveness. And then I'm going to kind of go towards the left side of my piece of paper and set it down, and then I'm going to kind of shift it back and forth a couple times like that, and then lift it up. And that shifting back and forth helps to get the color on there and create a fun little effect. So you see how that created that pretty background that we're going to use? All right, now let me grab my stamp chamois and we'll clean ourselves up a bit. It's always good to clean up when you've had ink all over your block. There we go. And why don't we give that a second go? We're going to do that again, same process, and then we'll have two because we've got everything out. So let me just make sure that's dry before I stick my ink on there. And let's grab another piece of paper. I always find once you start doing a technique like this, it's good to have a little stack of papers that are already cut because once you've done it once, you get excited and you want to make some more, right? And you may find that if you make 2 or 3, you find one that you like the best, and that's the one you're going to use. So we're going to start again with our honey butter, and you can play around with your colors and find out what colors kind of blend nicely together. There's our honey butter going on first because it's the lightest, and then we're going to take our limeade. We're going to apply some limeade down there and a little bit up here. And then that darkest color, the jade, we're going to apply that up here, like so. Again, we're going to take our spray bottle and shoo, shoosh. I need a little bit more. And we'll let it kind of mingle around a little bit. Now, I wanted to point out, too, this is why I'm doing it a second time. When you go to flip this over, don't flip it over on top of your piece of paper, okay? Because if it drips in weird places, you won't like that. So flip it over away from there and do it in one swift movement. If you do it in a swift movement, like that, the surface tension of the water will actually keep it all on your block. And so it won't slide and drip and do weird things. And then we'll come to our paper and we'll stick it down, Give it a little back and forth motion and then lift it up. So you can see how this would be a targeted smooshing instead of just you get what you get kind of smooshing. There is still a little bit of that you get what you get because you never know what the ink and the colors are going to do. But you have the effect of targeting where you want that block of smooshing. It's got a definite edge to it, and you can work with it from there. Okay, we've got that wiped off, set that aside. Now, because we have wetness happening here, we're going to just bring in our heat tool and just give this a quick little dry. Now, if you were doing this at home, not on a live video, you could just sit it and let it dry. You don't have to heat it up, but we're just going to bake it a little bit on both sides. Good morning, Heather. How's the crop going? Heather's away at an in-person crop this weekend. Hey, Joanne, no worries. You can be late. That's the great thing about videos, is that we can watch them again later, right? Yes, it does have kind of that tie-dye effect. Our targeted smooshing. You get the inks that kind of run into each other. And I'm kind of looking at these two, trying to decide which one I want to use, because they both have different things going for them. In fact, I might use them both. But for the today's video, I'll pick one. And then I'll make another card later on this afternoon when we're chatting and crafting. So just trying to dry some of that moisture, because we did add moisture to our paper. And in order to do our next couple steps, we need it to be a little bit dry. So let's see how that feels. That one's still a little wet on the end. That one's feeling good. Okay, so I think maybe I will go with this one because it's a little bit drier. Set that one aside. The next thing I want to do, and I should mention, this is we've done a similar technique before to this. We did it on a layout. It was a long time ago. But fellow close to my heart maker, Laura Beacham, was showing this technique recently. And I was like, oh, right, that's so much fun. Let's do it again. So I decided, yeah, let's do it. So thank you to Laura Beacham for reminding me of this fun technique. And so you'll probably see some other people creating stuff like this too. So I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to kind of try and make a straight line. I'm using the edge of my piece of cardstock as a bit of a guide, because I want my line to be fairly straight, even if my smooshing was a little bit crooked. And I'm just using my journal pen. This happens to be a navy one because my black one is AWOL. So I'm just adding a line there, and then let's come over to this side and add another line to give a distinction to this side of our smooshing. And I'm actually going down with two lines. I draw one line and then I just ever so slightly, oh, that one went a little too much slightly, ever so slightly move my ruler. And this one ended up leaving two distinct lines. I did a better job on the other side. So we're just going to fix it very carefully by drawing down the center. There we go. Nothing's ever perfect, right? You just got to go with it. That's how you know you made it yourself. Okay, so now we've got that lovely background with that fun smooshing, those lovely colors all mingling together. And I want to add my sentiment before I go too much farther. So I'm going to use my stamping platform for this because I'm going to be adding ink on top of where we've already done some ink work. I'm going to actually shift that a little bit. Had it set up, but of course you can never tell where you're going to drop that block. Yeah, no. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and because I'm using my stamp platform, I can stamp this more than once. And that is good when you're going on top of an already inked surface. Sometimes you need a little extra inking to get the solid color that you want, I find anyway. So I'm going to grab my intense black ink and ink up my sentiment like that, and stamp it over there. Yep, I'm going to do a little bit more, especially since we heated up that paper a minute ago. I almost find like it's almost like the pores in your skin. When you heat it up, the paper fibers kind of whoop, and then they soak in the ink really good. There, that looks great. Spread your wings. I love the font on that stamp. Isn't that a beautiful kind of font, that script? So we've got spread your wings. And of course, as I told you before, we are creating a card using that Hummingbird stamp set. So I thought I would come in with a contrast color, which is peach. And peach seems to look good with that combination of greens that we used. So I'm going to add some adhesive to the back. Now, because we did a wet sort of technique on here, I'm going to do a little extra adherence onto this piece of paper, because if your paper got a little bit warpy from the moisture, you can kind of help that out by adhering it down really well. It'll help hold that warp from being too exaggerated. This one actually didn't do too bad. It's got a little tiny bit of jiggledy-joggledy, but not too bad. Okay, let's line this up. And this peach was cut to just a little bit larger, so it was 4 1/8. I'll have to get my Versamat out here. Yeah, 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. That was the measurement I couldn't remember, was the 5 3/8. Then I've got my card base, and always with these pre-scored card bases, you're going to have a dip side and a bump side. You want to fold it with the bump side to the inside. And then let's adhere our panel to the front of the card. You don't need quite as much adhesive on this one, but we'll give it a little extra anyway. Just remove the backing off of there. So what do you think of that smooshing technique? Heather says, the crop is great. A few of our peeps are here. I know Laura's there. Is anybody else there, Heather? You and Laura? There we go. Adding that, and that leaves a tiny little bit of the white showing all the way around, which I think is lovely. And then we're going to do some stamping and get our hummingbird. So let me set this aside. I've got the hummingbird that's flying here, and I've also got this single flower. And we're going to go ahead and stamp onto, let me just make sure that's seasoned up. We're going to stamp onto this white daisy. Ink it up good. Stamp it on. Looks good. Ooh, we can even wash off our stamp. Got my stamp chamois all ready before we started today, because I knew we were going to be getting a little messy. And then this little flower. We're going to do 3 of these little flowers. 1, 2, 3 flowers. And then, of course, we can wash that off. Alrighty. Now, to do the coloring today, I have decided... Oh, Allison's there too. Say hi to Allison for us. I'm going to do my coloring today with the new Colorista Spectrum Noir colored pencils. And I'm using a couple pencils from each of these 2 packs. We have 3 different kinds of packs. We have Bright and Vivid, Perfect Portrait, and Natural Landscape. So I'm using some from the Bright and Vivid and the Perfect Portrait. So I'm going to grab those ones. And I'm going to start out with the Rosy Blush. Now, when you're coloring with a pencil crayon, I like to have my piece of paper have a little extra room on it. And you want to just scribble off on the side until you have a nice flat edge on a flat edge, a flat surface on your pencil crayon. And then you're going to go and apply color. And I'm just going to color all over these flowers. Now you'll remember that I just stamped this. I think that's the best thing about Intense Black is that you can stamp and then you can immediately come in and do whatever you want to the surface because it's a really good ink. So I'm going fairly medium pressure here. I'm just adding all over color, and then I'm going to come back and do a little bit extra on those little tips of the flowers that are kind of like the flower petal is cupping in a little bit. And so you see a little bit of the back side of the flower. So we're going to do that with a little extra pressure. And I'm going to rotate my pencil a little bit so that I get a little bit of an edge. Because if you have a little bit of an edge, you can almost lay down a bit more color. And that's what we want here. And there. And then over here. And that's our last one. And then I'm going to take the same color. I'm going to make sure I've got my flat edge again. And I'm just going to add some lovely rosy blush to the underside of our bird, kind of around the throat, up around the eye, just to get some of that pinky color going, maybe even a little bit up the wings. And then I'm going to switch to Pink Eggshell. And again, we'll make sure we've got a nice flat surface. And we're going to add a little bit underneath here. We're going to do the feet, add some around the head, like that, and a little bit on the wings. And then we're going to switch and go to the blue teal, because we want to have something that's a little bit in contrast to all that green that we inked on our page. So I'm first going to come in really lightly with this blue teal and just add some color to the tips of the feathers, like that, and a little bit on the little sort of the, you can see all the little feathery lines there, and then down on the tail. The thing about working with colored pencils is that you want to start light and then you can add color as you go. And then I'm going to come again to the top of the head like that. Now I'm going to switch over to a green. I've got pine green here and it's got a nice tip on it. I've obviously I have sharpened this one recently. And we're just going to add a little bit of green on top of that blue. And it really kind of brings out sort of an aqua teal-y feel. Again, we're going pretty light. We're not going crazy with, really strong color or anything. Add a little bit everywhere there was the blue. We're just going to add a little bit of the green. And you'll see how that changes the color. There we go. And then the last thing I want to do is come in with rich purple. I'm going to make sure we've got a nice edge there. And I'm just going to kind of do some shadowing on these wings with the purple. Just sort of around where they've actually done the shadowy lines. That's where I'm going to go. Sort of at the end of each feather and up the one side. Now when we get here, we can kind of just do an all over. Add a little bit there. A little bit there. And then again on these ones, we'll just add a little bit down the length of each one. Like that. You can even add a little bit under his belly. Under his chin. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now that we've done our coloring, we get to do our cutting. So we're going to go around. This hummingbird set is so pretty. And I think it will work for lots of occasions. For those of you who actually have bird feeders out and feed hummingbirds, this would be super pretty on a layout. To add some birds that you've colored yourself. You can even match them to the photos of the birds that you take pictures of. If you take pictures at your bird house, your bird feeders. Somewhere I have a hummingbird feeder, but I've never put it up. I don't think I've ever seen a hummingbird about, but maybe that's because I don't have my feeder out. And I've done my rough cut, so now I'm going ahead and doing my fussy cut. I'm pivoting my paper to get around all the nooks and crannies and leaving a halo of that white, which will look really nice when we apply this over where we did our inking, our targeted smooshing. And around his beak. Hummingbirds have such interesting beaks, don't they? And their little tongues. When you watch those, I don't know if you watch those like slow motion videos where they do close-ups of hummingbirds and they've got that long beak and then this little tongue just comes right on out. Super cool. It's amazing the creatures that we have on Earth, on our planet. So there's our little hummingbird that we have fussy cut. Oh, Kathy and Joan are there too. Awesome. Wow, you guys got a good crowd at the crop you're at, Heather. That's super fun. It's nice when you get to craft with friends. Even if you're doing it virtually like we are. It's super fun. That's why we like our craft and chat times, right? Because then we can chit-chat, see what everybody's making, hang out, get to catch up. So we're just going to fussy cut these flowers as well. I find these are pretty simple. You just kind of go in and out around the petals. And, you know, it's not too much work. Just a little bit. Plus, I like fussy cutting. You know that. We've been around here long enough to know that Monica likes fussy cutting, right? Alrighty. One more to go after this. And here we go. One thing I do like about the virtual crops is that I have been able to meet people from so many different places that I would never have met just going to a crop near where I live, you know, and that is so cool. You get to see so many different styles of crafting that people are doing, and I think it's just super cool. I think that is, if we have to find a silver lining, that's my silver lining from the whole COVID thing, is that so many people got started doing and attending things online, and that really kind of expanded our crafty friend circle. Okay, so now we can go ahead and add some of these to our layout. I'm going to take these little flowers and I'm just going to run my finger on them just like this and kind of curl up some of the petals. And then I'm going to apply a tiny little bit of adhesive to the back. Just park that there. We're going to need it again anyway. And let's stick one right there. We're going to do the same thing. Give it a little curl. I mean, if you're going to put it in the mail, it's probably not going to make any difference. But it looks super cool when you do it. And so it's all about the look, right? Give it a little extra texture. And then we're going to add another flower there. And then this last one, let's grab some foam tape. Maybe this thicker 3D foam tape. And we can, of course, do a little bit of the curling like that. And I'm trying to make sure that my my flowers aren't all placed the same direction, right? So that it looks a little bit more variety. And then we're going to take our hummingbird here and let's just use the same foam tape. We're going to add some foam tape to our hummingbird so it looks like it's flying around. Just a couple pieces. There we go. And remove our backing. Now to stick this guy on, I'm going to do my little trick with my tweezers because I want to be able to see where I'm putting them without my fingers in the way. So we're going to stick them right there. Like that. I love that. Spread your wings. And then, of course, we need a little bit of bling. So for this, I'm just going to use these clear sparkles and bitty sparkles. So they're not adding any color. We've already got some really lovely colors going on there. But it will add some sparkle. Let me grab that. So we've got the little guys and the big guys. The clear sparkles and the bitty sparkles. So let's add a clear sparkle there. And a bitty sparkle there. Just to add to our little floral cluster. And then maybe we'll add a little guy here off on the white. And it helps your eye move around on the card. And then we'll add a couple more, and that will give us 5, which is an odd number. And there we go. That is our completed card. So we started out by creating that targeted smooshing technique using our acrylic block and our inks, a little bit of water, and then stamping it down and giving it a little slide back and forth to make sure that all that lovely ink transferred. Then, of course, we added our lines with our journal pen just to give it a nice edge, a finished look. Putting a mat of the peach cardstock underneath that for a little bit of contrast, which we carried through then with our coloring. We kind of picked up on those peach tones there. But, of course, adding a little bit of blue-green happening there, so it's a bit of contrast from all of our lovely yellow and green that's happening there. Pop them up with our foam tape, and we used coloring pencils for this, and stamping our sentiment and some bling. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that come together. I hope you give this technique a try, some targeted smooshing, and if you do, be sure to take a picture of your project and pop it in the comments on either the crop page or on my business page, because we would all love to see what you create with this targeted smooshing technique. Have a wonderful rest of the morning, and we will see you at 11:30 for Chat and Craft. Toodaloo! Bye!